Hello, my dear student. How are you? I think you all are well by the Almighty, by the grace of Almighty Allah. I am also good by the grace of Almighty Allah. And uh, my last class was about the complex sentence and clauses, and I showed you about the different kinds of clauses and I showed example concluded about about the adjective clause in a complex sentence. You have already learned about the sentence. Complex sentence is formed at least uh, two clauses, two subject, two at least two verb. You have already learned about the complex sentence, but I discussed my last class about the adjective clause in a complex sentence. If you do not know the different kinds of clauses, you cannot frame the adjective clause, frame the complex sentence, and if you be failure about understanding the complex sentence, you cannot transfer the sentence into simple or compound to simple, or simple to complex. So, this is the most important part of framing sentences of simple, complex, and compound, or complex, simple, compound. That means complex sentence will teach you about the different kind of clauses, and the complex sentence all along based on the different clauses. We cannot frame any complex sentence besides the clauses. However, I will discuss about the subordinate type of adjective clause in a complex sentence. How the subordinate clause of adjective type frame a complex sentence. Come to the point. In a uh, complex sentence, complex sentence, you have to remember yourself and memorize frequently. Complex sentences are based on the different kind of clauses. You have already learned about the different clauses in my last class. That means then I discussed about the three kinds of clauses: main clause, subordinate clause, coordinate clause. And you have understood there is no classification of main clause or coordinate clause. Only subordinate clause are divided into three kinds, such as adjective clause, adverb clause, and noun clause. However, I will discuss about the adjective clause in a complex sentence, and how the adjective clause frame a complex sentence by his own type. However, I assure you another thing, that means adjective clause mainly rhymes following the two rules. of two structure or three structure. Firstly, adjective clause, first rule and first structure. Adjective clause all along modify the object of a main clause, object of the main clause, such as structure, first structure, subject, verb, object, who, is, that, plus verb, object, extension, it may be or not. You have to know adjective clause all along takes the who, is, that as its subject. That means this part is adjective clause. This part is adjective clause, and this is main clause or principal clause. This is main clause or principal clause. And according to the first structure of adjective clause in a complex sentence, adjective clause all along modify the object of the main clause. That means adjective clause all along modify the object of main clause. Modify means extra information about the persons or things. However, I cite an example. Example, that means my friend is Tariq. My friend is Tariq, who helps the weaker students. Weaker students. That means you can see this part is included pronoun who, and it refers, it modifies the object of main clause Tariq. That means object of main clause, and this part is totally the main clause. That means who means Tariq. My friend is Tariq, who helps the weaker students. Who, uh, uh, this part is who is always modifies the object of main clause Tariq. That means according to the structure, adjective clause always modify the object of main clause. You may cite more examples, such as the she's. The she's want gold. That adds the she beauty. And you can see that this part is adjective clause and this part main clause, and adjective clause modify the object of main clause goal, and according to the structure adjective clause modifies the object of main clause. I think you have been clear about the first structure of adjective clause in a complex sentence. Next, I will discuss about the following two structure of second rule of adjective clause in a complex sentence. Structure, however, I write. Uh, I have already written the structure of the adjective clause, and this structure all along follow will all along follow the subject of main clause, and this up to here you have seen about that the adjective clause all along modify the object of main clause, and following example will show you the adjective clause modify the subject of main clause. That means adjective clause will modify the subject of main clause, such as my father. My father is an engineer. That jobs in a company in America. And main clause, this part is main clause, and you have already understood, already have learned that main clause is totally independent and main clause never depends any other clauses, but subordinate clause already depends on main clause. In before classes you have already learned. So you have to memorize yourself the about the main clause and subordinate clause. And this part, this example shows the adjective clause modify the subject of main clause. This part adjective clause and this is main clause or principal clause. That means that my father is an engineer who jobs in a company in America, and that modify the subject of main clause father, my father. This is the subject of main clause. You have already understand or already understood about the structure and the example. You may cite more example such as the natural natural gas is our national asset. National asset, which or that should be which should be produced abundantly. Abundantly. That means this part adjective clause and this part main clause. Adjective clause, here adjective clause modify the subject of main clause. That means the natural gas, the subject of main clause. And I think you have already understood about the uh, structure of adjective clause that modify the subject of main clause, and you can you can frame the another structure of adjective clause in a complex sentence that modify the that also modify the subject of the main clause. You can cite such as for example, structure second structure you may frame another subject plus who is or that plus verb plus object plus verb plus object, or extension maybe or not extension, this part main clause, this is main clause, and middle part of the structure is adjective clause, and this subject is of main clause. That means here adjective here or adjective is also modify this subject of main clause. That means this structure and this structure are follow the modify the subject of main clause, but the framing design is different. You may design the adjective clause in a complex sentence such as, that means second structure of this board. I cite an example. My brother who is a doctor works in a hospital. That means adjective clause means main clause, main clause here. The adjective clause also modify the subject of main clause, my brother. That means you may design the adjective clause that modify the subject of main clause uh, in the two in the two sides, but two designs. That means subject, verb, object, main clause, and next part totally adjective clause. And otherwise, you can size the structure, you can frame the structure, such as the subject of main clause and middle stage who is that included, and next verb object, or the you can set up this structure in the middle stage of adjective clause, and last part verb and object or extension. This part is of the main clause. There is no hard and fast rule, there is no hard and fast bar framing the adjective clause in a complex sentence. Uh, uh, complex sentence, uh, there is no bar, and this is the best learning and knowing about the adjective clause in a complex sentence. But finally, we have already known about the three structure of the complex sentences. First structure, adjective clause in a complex sentence always be uh, modify the object of a main clause. And secondly, we have learned about the adjective clause, and here the adjective clause always modify the subject of the main clause. And this is the final learning of this class, and I will teach you in my next class about the